The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. You can win up to 325 times your entry with the new Pick 8. It's on the promo code SGPN. Claim a special pick and first deposit offer up to $200 in bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today. Go to sportsgamblingpockets.com/rhythm, sportsgamblingpockets.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Thursday night, roughly 8 p.m. Eastern Time on July 4th. I'm Ross, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for the pod. Should be a fun episode to go through because it is time to get into the third round of Wimbledon. So we're going to preview the upcoming matches. Not all of them, but we are going to go through most of them. Unfortunately, though, I am pretty short on betting odds for the Saturday matches. So we have a couple of moneyline odds and nothing really else. So we're going to try to do our best going through Saturday, and basically everything, though, for Friday. So we're going to go through pretty much a decent amount of those matches. Either way, though, before we get into any of the actual picks, do want to remind everybody once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also remind everybody once again to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So no matter how you consume the podcast, either through, I'd say, audio and visual, just with YouTube, or through audio only, you can still support the show. So leave a review, especially if you are on Spotify or Apple, because recently we haven't gotten many reviews. So once again, hopefully those go up a little bit. Also, a reminder, don't forget to check out the SGPN merch store because we have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. So if you want a shirt, a sweatshirt, or a mug, you know where to go. High quality stuff. Recommend you checking it out on the merch store. Also, a reminder that we have other podcasts with the network, not just the tennis show. And the feature show for this week is actually going to be the SGP Stories pod. There is a new episode out on Patreon, and the guys do a forensics file style deep dive on the Bobby Petrino motorcycle accident that cost him his job. Plus, the other featured podcast of the week is actually a show I'm on, which is the WNBA Gambling Podcast with that has me and Terrell on it. So far, we've had a good start to the year. We're actually going to have an episode right after this. So at roughly 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a WNBA show. So make sure to switch over to the NBA Gambling Podcast feed on YouTube if you do want to catch the live stream. Anyway, time to get into the actual recap of the second round. Starting off with the lock and dog picks. Overall, decent episode for us. Not amazing. We did not end up sweeping, but we did end up winning the lock again. However, before we get into any of that, have to at least mention the dog from the first round episode. That was not actually decided the last time we recorded for the second round, because you ended up seeing Golubic and Niemeyer get delayed a couple of days. And either way, point is we ended up losing the dog there, as the over 2.5 sets didn't get there, as Niemeyer destroyed her and won in straight sets. Now, for the lock and dog picks for the men's second round, won the lock. We had Ruud and Fognini over 3.5 sets at minus 135. Really just a weird match in general, because Fognini ended up burying Ruud for about 95% of the match. But Ruud was down 5-2 in the third set double break and ended up winning the set. So he ended up saving us after no showing the first set and a half, give or take. Point is, though, Ruud was actually a good grass player for about 20 minutes. And that's all we needed, because he ended up losing in 4. So Ruud did us a solid by doing the bare minimum to cover the actual bet for us, despite losing as a massive favorite in the match. So a nice winner there for the lock. For the dog, though, ended up picking up a loss. We had a 2-pick parlay with the over 3.5 sets in the Griekspoor match and the Thompson match. Griekspoor match was the way that I thought it would go. I thought Griekspoor would probably win, but it ended up going 5 sets. Thought him and Kekmanovic would have a war, and they did. Thompson, though, got buried by Nakashima. That was not even close. Nakashima looked fantastic. Thompson looked cooked, basically, and you ended up seeing Nakashima win in straight sets. So I picked up a loss there for the dog. Once again, not a terrible episode. I think most of the leans actually worked out, especially the player to win and both players to win a set market. I know those worked out pretty well. I'll mention those in a second. Point is, though, decent episode for the actual picks. Now, getting into the actual recap of the second round, I'm going to start off with the matches that took place on Wednesday. For starters, you ended up having the just trying to think of which thing to talk about first. I'll start off with the Ruud match, as he ended up losing in 4. Mentioned in the Futures episode that Ruud is awful on grass, loses in the first or second round every year, and this year was no different. The crazy part was him being that big of a favorite, as he was around minus 500, despite being a horrible grass player. And Fognini was phenomenal. Ruud, when he was down double break, had not had any breaks in the entire match, and then he broke back-to-back. So Fognini served very well. Ruud really did not, and you could tell that Ruud was uncomfortable the entire match. But Fognini, even though Ruud is not a good grass player, was phenomenal for 95% of the matchup. So props to Fognini for looking sharp, and now he takes on Agut in the third round. You had Medvedev, who ended up surviving a bit of a scare there against Moore, as all 4 sets were close, but eventually won despite losing the first set. So a nice win there. Alcaraz was actually down a break in the first set, came back, though, ended up winning the first set and in straight sets eventually against Vukic. Safulin and Cerundolo finished. Safulin got the job done coming back from 2 sets down. Saw Rusevori beat McDonald in 3. Pui ended up beating Desir in 3. Ended up seeing Nishikori against Rinderknech. Rinderknech won in 5. I meant Rusevori 1 in 5, Pui 1 in 5, and Rinderknech 1 in 5. Some of those were first round matchups, but they finally finished them, as there were a couple of matches that got delayed or just outright suspended. So point is, those ended up finishing. Bublik ended up beating Kazo in straight sets. You ended up seeing Agut beat Sonego. We got that match right as well. Thought that Agut would get the job done with both players to win a set, and that was plus money. Paul survived a marathon against Virtanen. You saw Tabilo, or Guy, who ended up beating Evans in the first round, as that was delayed, and then he ended up winning in his match against Kaboli, which was a marathon, in 5 sets on Thursday. I mentioned Kekmanovic, though. He won in 5. Kokonakis came back from 2 sets down against Felix, as he won in 5 and eventually retired midway through the second round match. Struff beat Zhang. That one we got right as well. We had Struff and both players to win a set. That worked out well. Sinner ended up beating Berrettini in 4, courtesy of 3 breakers. Now, the main, I'd say the most shocking development over the course of that day on Wednesday was the massive choke job by Goffin. So I'm going to have to set the scene here, because Goffin was up 2 sets to nothing, and he was up a break in the third set. So you're thinking, okay, not exactly one of the biggest choke jobs I've ever seen, but that's still a pretty bad one when you are up 2 sets and 3-1 and 4-2, by the way, that was the second set, sorry. Third set, he was up 3-1. So you're up 2 sets and 3-1. You lose the set. Okay, it happens, whatever. You lose the fourth set, and you're thinking, okay, Goffin's older. He's probably going to roll over, and Makic probably is going to win this one in 5 pretty convincingly. Then Goffin, after losing the last 2 sets, won the first 5 games of the third set. So once again, he was up 2 sets to nothing with a break in the third, and then eventually led 5-0 in the 5th set. And he lost. He lost 7-6 in the final set. That's almost impossible. That's one of the worst choke jobs I've ever seen. I know Offner had a really bad one last year in his home country, actually, of Austria, which is up there too. But that was 2 out of 3 sets. A 3 out of 5 set match involving a blown 2 sets to love lead with a break in the third, and then up 5-0 in the final set, and you lose. That's an all-time choke job, I got to mention. That's crazy. So that was the main, I'd say, talking point for Wednesday. It was the absolute choke job that Goffin had, which is an all-timer. Anyway, moving on to Thursday. I don't think I have anything else to add for Wednesday. Moving on to Thursday, you had a lot of competitive matches as well. A lot of 5-setters. You had Komensanya, who ended up beating Walton in 5. You saw Hurkacz retire, actually, as Fees, I believe, had match point in the breaker in the 4th set. And instead of losing, Hurkacz decided, you know what, I'm good. And he ended up quitting when he was down 8-9 in the breaker, which I thought was a pretty interesting development there, but Fees looked at the better player for most of the way through anyway, and Hurkacz ended up losing in basically 4 sets, but not officially 4 sets. You saw Shelton beat Harris in 5. I thought Harris was live. I mean, he was up 2 sets to 1, and it went to a super breaker, so that was competitive, but Shelton eventually got the job done 10-7 in the final set. You saw Dimitrov come back from 2 sets down against Shang. You saw Papirin beat Echeverry in 5. I had that on VSiN, so that worked out pretty well. Shapo beat Altmaier in 5. Musetti beat Darderi in 5. So once again, a lot of 5-set matches. In fact, going through the actual card, 6 of the first 8 matches on Thursday ended in 5 sets, which is pretty weird. But either way, you saw Safulin beat Makic in 4. I did lean to the over in that one. That finished just a bit short. That was on VSiN. That finished a bit short. Djokovic ended up beating Fernley in 4. It looked like it was going to be pretty straightforward, then it wasn't, and Fernley made it a match, but Djokovic eventually outlasted him in the 4th set. Tabilo ended up beating Kaboli in 5. Fun match there, where he was up 2-0, then he blew it, and then he ended up holding on to win the final set 6-4. You ended up seeing Halles beat Kashanov in 5. You saw Rune win against Seabolt Wild after losing the first set. So nice win there by Rune. Fritz beat Rinderknech, which had some drama to it, as Fritz was kind of talking trash at the net in the post-match handshake. Apparently, Rinderknech was kind of talking down a bit to Fritz pre-match in the presser, and Fritz kind of rubbed it in his face. Good for Fritz. I don't care. If you're going to talk trash and then you're going to lose, then the guy that you trash talk should be able to kind of trash talk you back. So I had no issues with that. Rinderknech was offended, or he was upset, or his feelings were hurt. I don't care. Apparently, it's a pretty well-known sore loser on tour, so not a total shock. But Fritz got the job done there in 4. Kokkinakis could not, I'd say, withstand a second-round matchup physically after having the 5-set marathon against Felix, including the multiple delays with either rain or darkness or whatever. So point is, he ran out of gas, and Pui ended up beating him in basically 3 sets, but it was 5-2 in the third with 1 set apiece. So Kokkinakis couldn't handle it and decided it was not time to continue trying to fight through it. He decided to quit. Norrie ended up beating Draper in straight sets. I did mention that on VSiN as well, had the Norrie plus 4.5. I mentioned pre-tournament that Draper's quarter odds were insane. Getty beat Alcaraz on grass, and I understand that he was in good form and he won a grass title, but damn, his price was crazy. And we saw Norrie beat him in straight sets. Especially not too surprising since Draper almost lost to Emer in the first round, which was a bit of a shock there. We saw Tsitsipas lose to Ruusuvuori in 4 sets. Good win there for Ruusuvuori as he won the first 2 sets of competitive tiebreaks. Tsitsipas, once again, still a head case. Nothing's going to change there. Perricard buried Nishioka as he won and only dropped 7 games in the process. Nishioka was too small to actually return serve for Perricard, and he's also not a good server anyway. So Perricard looked very good after winning the first round in a 5-set marathon against Korda. And the last match was a very underwhelming one as Zverev ended up beating up on Giron pretty comfortably. The only other piece of, I'd say, news was Murray, who played doubles with his brother, and they lost, to Hijikata, and I think it was Piers. I think that was the Australian pair that beat them. Point is, though, Murray ended up having the microphone. It was basically a farewell type of post-match on-court interview. Everyone started kind of crying, and there was some cheering involved, and it was a nice overall scene. Still think it was pretty weird for Murray to not do singles, but to do doubles, but doesn't really matter in the end. He probably would have lost to Makic in the first round anyway, so decided to leave with some, I don't want to say dignity, but the point is it was a little bit weird, and it's officially over. Or I should say not officially, because I think Murray is actually still in mixed doubles. I think he's with, I want to say Raducanu. I think he's in mixed doubles, but the point is he is officially done with doubles and probably singles for the rest of his career. Unless he decides to show up for the U.S. Open, then I think that it's going to be the end of his career at this point. So either way, we know Murray, he is an all-time great player who was forced to play in basically the wrong era for him. I know, by the way, I did confirm he's facing off against Zhang and Arevalo in mixed doubles on the, I believe that's the 6th. So in a couple days, he'll be playing mixed doubles with Raducanu. Anyway, point is Murray had a phenomenal career. The issue is that he, of course, had to play in the same era as Djokovic and Federer and Nadal, and he was easily the 4th best out of those 4 guys. So Murray got his ass kicked by Djokovic all the time, especially in the Australian Open, where it seemed like he lost in every single semifinals or final matchup. But the point is Murray did win multiple Grand Slams. He's the best player that Britain's had in a long time, arguably ever, and he had a Hall of Fame career. Did I like him? No, I did not. He was one of my least favorite players, but I'm not going to try to, celebrate his retirement. I'm just happy that after watching him kind of, I don't want to say embarrass himself, but after watching him lose consistently over the last year or so, it's good to see him move on. I'm happy that he's not a Venus Williamsing the situation where he's just going to hang around for an extra 5 years and occasionally play when he should have retired years ago. So Murray went out with some dignity. It was a nice ceremony post-match, and it was definitely nice to see his career unfold. I mean, he did win a couple of Grand Slam titles. He would have won more if he was in a different era. The point is Murray's still a Hall of Famer, still viewed as the 4th guy out of the big 3, and he's the 4th guy out. So, or the first guy out, you know what I mean? Point is, though, Murray's career basically ended, and it was definitely a nice send-off by center court to send him off with that type of applause and to give him the ovation he deserves on behalf of the country. Either way, though, time to move on to the 3rd round. Trying to think if there's anything else left to talk about. I can't think of anything. I think we covered most of it. So we're going to move on to the 3rd round. But before we get into any of that, Do you want to take a quick second to remind everybody once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because their Pick 8 is now live. Great entries with 8 picks and Underdog automatically double flex your entries, so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make and extra ways to win, the excitement's higher than ever. Best part, you can now win up to 325 times the original amount. You can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. I'm going to keep using the higher rebounds on Angel Reese for my Pick 8. So once again, it's been an absolute wagon. Going to go back to it every time. Don't miss out on your chance to win. And a reminder, sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special Big Andy first time deposit offer up to $200 bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Of course, Circa contests have no rake. Circa Millions pick 5 NFL teams, ATS each week, and compete for $6 million or survive the NFL Goal Line Survivor to claim the $10 million prize. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com. Save you $50 with the promo code SGP. Don't have your trip booked for Las Vegas yet before football? Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sportsbook in the world from August 22nd to August 24th. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the second round. Now it's time to move on into the third round. Once again, not going to cover all of the matches. We're going to do our best to cover a decent amount of them. So starting off with the first match on the card, you have a fun one. You have Fognini taking on Agut in what feels like a throwback match to about 2010. Point is, though, Agut's a massive favorite, about minus 225. Fognini, fresh off of the win against Ruud, is plus 195. He's around plus 4.5 on the games, and you see Agut at around minus 4.5. The over-under set at around 38. For the set wagering, Agut minus 1.5 sets is minus 110. Fognini plus 1.5 is minus 120 for the sets, and the over 3.5 sets is minus 180. The under is plus 150. Now, I think the odds on this match are pretty weird. I understand why Agut's favored, but Fognini's been really good. I feel like the line's disrespectful here, and Fognini, historically speaking, has owned Agut in the head-to-head. In fact, to go through the actual details here, Fognini in the head-to-head is a 9-3. Now, they have not faced off in a long time. I'll admit it. They have not faced off on actually clay last year, and Fognini did win that one in 3 sets, but the last Grand Slam meeting they had was in the French Open back in 2019, and Fognini did win that one in 4. Point is, though, it seems like these odds are too big. Fognini, if he plays anywhere near as well as he played against Ruud, I think he's going to win. Fognini was great. Once again, he didn't get broken until he was serving for the match twice. So, with that being the case, I think Agut is too big of a favorite here. I see the value with Fognini. I think he's going to make it very interesting. I think he can win it. I obviously like the over for the sets in this matchup. I think it's going at least 4. I don't see one guy blowing the other guy out. Now, Agut did end up beating Sonego in 4 sets in the second round. I mentioned it before, though. Sonego has not won back-to-back matches this year in a long time, so not going to overreact to that win too much. Martero's not a great grass player either. Fognini, though, ended up beating Van Asch, who was a last-minute replacement, so a bit of a lucky draw there for Fognini, but then he beat Ruud. Not good on grass, but still a solid player in general, and he beat him comfortably. So I am going to go with Fognini for the value. I think plus 190 is too high. I really don't know why these odds are so big. I feel like Agut should be favored minus 140, maybe? Like, I think 225 is insane. Give me Fognini for the money line at what I think could be a close matchup. I don't mind Fognini to win, by the way, and both players to win a set. I think that was plus 310 on Caesars. I don't mind that either. But give me Fognini plus the games at 4.5. I think you see a marathon unfold between 2 of the veteran guys. Moving on to the next matchup. We're going to skip around a little bit. Going to go to a matchup between Paul and Bublik. For this one, you see Paul at around minus 200, give or take. For this one, I see minus 186 actually on the book I'm looking at. You see Bublik at around plus 160. For the game spread, you have minus 3.5 for Paul. You have plus 3.5 for Bublik. Over under set at 39. For the set wagering, the over 3.5 sets is minus 200. Paul minus 1.5 sets is minus 110. And you have Bublik plus 1.5 sets at minus 120. Now, Paul's been good in the head-to-head, as Paul is currently 3-1 lifetime. To go through the recent meetings, though, the last meeting they had was in Rotterdam back in 2021. So very dated. I don't know if that actually matters. Faced off one time on grass, though, in London in 2019, and Bublik did win in straight sets, 6-4, 7-6. Now, Paul's had a bit of a tricky path so far. Ended up going to 4 sets against Martinez and went to 5 sets against Virtanen He was actually down 2-1 in that one. Virtanen's a pretty decent server. Bublik's a better server. But Paul did struggle a bit in the return game early in that matchup before figuring it out and eventually winning in 5. Now, Bublik had a marathon in the first round as he lost the first 2 sets to Mensik, but he's been very good since. He's won 6 straight sets. Won the last 3 against Mensik, won the only 3 against Kaza. He's been solid. I think that the argument can be made that Paul's too big of a favorite here. And I do think that Bublik, the only win he has in the head-to-head was on grass. So I think that Bublik actually is pretty live to win it. I think plus 160 is a good price. Paul dropping 2 sets to Virtanen is not ideal. Dropping a set to Martinez is definitely not ideal because Martinez is not known for being a good grass player at all. He's more of a clay specialist. So even though Paul was able to get by, I think Bublik is the better grass player than Paul. I know Paul did win a 500 event on grass this year. We saw Bublik win one last year. But I think it's going to be a marathon. I think Bublik's the better server, and I do think that Bublik can really make life uncomfortable for Paul. And I think with that being the case, the drop shots might make him uncomfortable, the overall variety. Yes, Bublik can self-destruct, and maybe the overall stability or the consistency of Paul's games, I'd say game style can result in Bublik self-destructing. But I think these odds are a little bit off to me. I think Paul should be a smaller favorite, probably in the realm of 140, 150. So based on the value, I'll lean to Bublik. I still like the over for the sets. I don't see Bublik winning in straight sets. So once again, I'll go with Bublik to win and both players to win a set, which should be in the plus 200 somewhere in that realm. Moving on to the next matchup. I am going to skip around a bit. So looking at the next matchup that we're going to talk about, we're going to look at Shelton versus Shapo. Now, this one should be fun. Shelton and Shapo have had some marathons. So Shelton went to 5 sets against Harris and against Bellucci. You're looking at Shapo, though, you went to 5 sets against Altmaier, and you ended up seeing him go win in straight sets against Jari, who's been in pretty bad form recently, especially on grass. Now, for the actual money line price, Shelton is a slight favorite, as Shelton's around minus 128. Shapo's around plus 108, and you're looking at the game spread -1 for Shelton, +1 for Shapo. Over-under is set at 42.5. The over 3.5 sets is -220. Now, for this matchup, I have to mention the head-to-head, which I believe is non-existent between these two players, so nothing to actually go by. Now, Shelton has been fine, but he's been dropping sets, and we know that he is, I don't want to say he's a serve bot because he has made a Grand Slam semi, but he's kind of a serve bot, and I do think you're going to end up seeing a pretty competitive matchup that should go to at least 4 sets in this one, probably with a couple breakers. So, first glance, I like the over. I think these guys are going to kill each other. Now, Shapo, I think, is the better grass player. He's had more success on grass over the years. Shelton, you could argue, maybe has more upside, but I'm not sure if he actually does. So beating Harris was a nice win. I'll give him props on that. The issue I run into, though, with Shelton is if he'll be able to maintain enough consistency to get the job done. And Shapo's kind of in the same boat where he's a head case and can self-destruct at any moment. Now, that's why I like the over. I don't see many breaks in this matchup, but I think if I had to go for the actual value, I'd lean to the dog again. I see a real coin flip here. It's not like there's really much separating either guy. I think that you're looking at Shapo, who has the firepower from both wings to really make Shelton uncomfortable, and vice versa. So with that being the case, I like the over in this matchup, and I'm going to lean to Shapo. I think he can win at least 2 sets. I think he'll be able to push it to potentially 5, and I think at that point you have what could be a complete coin toss. So that being the case, give me the plus money on the coin toss. My favorite play, though, will be the over at around 42 or 42.5. With a 7-6 and 3 other 6-4s, you win. Or you can go to 5 again, and Shelton can once again have a marathon, and you basically win automatically. So give me the over in that one as my main lean, but I am going to lean to Shapo for the, in my opinion, value on a coin toss match. Now, moving on to the next matchup. A lot of good ones, actually, on the card. Not going to talk about Alcaraz and Tiafoe. I think Alcaraz is going to win. Struff and Medvedev's kind of interesting because Medvedev's not that big of a favorite as he's around -175. You're looking at Struff, he's around +138. For this one, you have the over-under in games set at 40.5. The game spread is -2.5 for Medvedev. And if you want the set spread here, Medvedev -1.5 sets is a +100, while Struff +1.5 sets is -130. So for this one, Medvedev has been fine in the event, not exactly amazing, but he's been getting by. So he was able to beat Moore in 4 sets. It was competitive, but he won and ended up beating, drawing a blank, he ended up beating Kovacevic in straight sets in the first round. Kovacevic, not really a great player, more of a challenger guy, so not exactly a big level opponent there, but the match against Mueller was competitive, so much so that people were kind of concerned that Medvedev might be on upset alert here against Struff. Now, Struff had a solid win in the first round against Morozin in 4, and then he beat Zhang in 4, which we predicted in exactly the case. So I think Medvedev's going to win. Medvedev is really dominant in the head-to-head. So far, they faced off 9 times. Medvedev is 7-2. Faced off in Wimbledon in 2021. Medvedev did win in 4. That was the only grass match they've ever had. So not much to go by. The only grass meeting, actually early on, was in Wimbledon. Faced off earlier, right before it in Halle, and Struff did win that one in straight sets. So nothing on grass for about the last 2+ years, and basically 3 years. So with that being the case, do I think Struff can win this? I do, but I don't agree with the odds. I think Medvedev should be a bigger favorite. I feel like it's a massive overreaction. Medvedev did make the semis last year. I think he's more consistent than Struff is, and even though you might get some breakers involved, I think Medvedev is disrespected here. I find it weird that Paul is a bigger favorite against Bublik than Medvedev is against Struff. That feels a bit off to me, personally. I think Medvedev at minus 175 is juicy, but I feel like that actually is cheap. I would put him at around minus 200, personally. I think Struff can win a set, maybe 2, but Medvedev, I think, just has a bit too much consistency for Struff to handle. Struff's going to try to serve volley a lot with Medvedev's core positioning on returns, and that might have some success. But I'm not sold on Struff's return game, and I do think that Medvedev can get the job done in 4 or 5 in this one. So for me, I'm going to go with the favorite here. The odds feel a bit too short to me. I'll lean to Medvedev minus the 2.5 games. I'd rather have 2 if I could find it, but I think that Struff is once again a bit overvalued here. Give him the favorite, and I think it's a bit of an overreaction to how the second round matchup unfolded, the 4-set victory against Mueller. Give him Medvedev to get the job done into this one. Moving on to the next match. Are we going to cover anything else for Thursday? We'll cover one more match. For Friday, they'll move into Saturday. So looking at Dimitrov and Monfils. For this one, Dimitrov is a big favorite, as Dimitrov is around minus 300. Monfils around plus 250. For the game spread, you have minus 4.5 for Dimitrov, plus 4.5 for Monfils. For the set spread here, you have Dimitrov minus 1.5 sets, which is available at minus 145. You have Monfils plus 1.5 sets at plus 115. The over in games is set at 39 for the over-under. Over 3.5 sets is minus 165. Going to the head-to-head, though, Dimitrov has not been good against Monfils in the past, as Monfils actually 4-1 lifetime. Now, Dimitrov has not faced off against Monfils since 2016, so nothing to go by. I'm tossing every head-to-head meeting in the garbage because I can't use anything from 8+ years ago. Now, Monfils has been good in the event, dropped 1 set to Manarino, and then he beat Wawrinka in straight sets. For Dimitrov, he looked very good in the first round against Lajovic. Then he looked really bad against Zhang, but he figured it out as he lost the first 2 sets. Then he came back and won in 5. So I think it's pretty, I'd say, interesting that Dimitrov's a minus 300 favorite despite having to go 5 sets on Thursday with no day off before Friday. And Monfils beat Wawrinka, and he already finished most of that match the day prior. He finished it on Thursday. But the point is, he has a rest day advantage. So I think Monfils is actually pretty live here. I think that these odds are way off. Dimitrov, I think, is the better player at this stage in their careers. But coming off a full 5-setter, when your other guy basically had to play 2 games in the entire match on Thursday, there's a massive advantage there. I think Monfils is mispriced. Now, I think Dimitrov, if he wins, would I be shocked? No. But I think that the minus 300 price is insane. We saw Dimitrov almost lose to Zhang, who has been pretty good on grass this year, still young and not much of a resume on grass. But Dimitrov, I think, is vulnerable. Monfils been good in the head-to-head. Yes, dated, but the point is that means Monfils stylistically matches up pretty well with Dimitrov. So I'm going to go with Monfils here. I think plus 250 is appealing. I think he'll win a set. I like the over 3.5 sets, and I would lean to the games here at plus 4.5. Stamina might not be a concern for Dimitrov, but I have to at least factor it in. A 5-set marathon the day prior with no time off is really a bad spot for him. And I think Monfils can capitalize early. But when you're looking at that matchup against Zhang, trying to see quickly how long the match actually took, because I'm actually curious if it ended up breaking the 3-hour mark. I'm not sure if it did. I don't have it in front of me. Point is, though, that was a long match, competitive matchup. 4 of the 5 sets went to at least 10 games, so probably a long one. I think Monfils has an edge there, so I'm going to go with Monfils for the value. Moving on to Saturday, a reminder, that we are missing a decent amount of lines for Saturday, so I'm going to have to dig and use whatever I can find. So starting off with the first match we're going to talk about, we have Fees taking on Safulin. For this one, you have Fees as a minus 175 favorite. You have Safulin at around plus 138. Now, Fees is 2-0 lifetime, faced off in Marseille last year and in France the year prior as well, and Fees won in straight sets both times. Now, Safulin had a marathon in the first round against Cerundolo, and then he had a competitive matchup against Makic as he won in 4. For Fees, though, he's been really comfortable. Ended up beating Stricker in 4, won the first 2 sets comfortably, though, and then ended up winning the first 2 sets against Hurkacz, and then eventually Hurkacz had to retire in the 4th set breaker when Fees did have match point. So, nice upset win by Fees in the second round. I think he's going to win. I think he's more comfortable on grass right now. Fees I've roasted for most of the year for being underwhelming since making the ATP Next Gen final last year. But he's been solid on grass. And I think Safulin, despite being in pretty good form so far in this event, he is definitely not, I'd say, a dominant player by any means on grass. And I think that this could be a matchup that goes the distance. And Fees being younger and having a bit less mileage, since Safulin had to finish his match against Cerundolo a day after it was scheduled, and then he had the marathon against Makic as well. I think that it's a good spot for Fees, and I think the price is actually worthy. So I think Fees wins probably in 4. Maybe you can go back to the Fees to win and both players to win a set market, but I think that Safulin will eventually struggle, and I think that Fees, despite being a player that's had a bit of a shaky 2024, I like his current form, and beating a top 10 guy does help. So give me Fees in this one to get the job done, which should be in a competitive matchup. Now, for the next one, going to go to Fritz and Tabilo. Fritz is a decent favorite, minus 450. You're looking at Tabilo at around plus 333. Faced off 2 times in their careers, and Fritz is 2-0. Faced off this year in Indian Wells, Fritz did win that one in straight sets, with a breaker, though, in the first set. And they faced off in Houston on clay in 2022, and Fritz did win that one in straight sets. Now, Tabilo has been very solid recently. Of course, he cashed us a 14-1 ticket last weekend in where the hell was Mallorca. Ended up cashing us an outright ticket there. We also took him to have a pretty respectable run here in Wimbledon, but we didn't actually give him out for any outrights. Now, Tabilo has been fine in the event, as he was able to win his first round match in straight sets against Evans. Good win there. Then almost blew a 2 sets lead against Caboli, but he held on in 1 and 5. As for Fritz, he's been fine. Ended up winning in straight sets in his first round match against O'Connell, and ended up beating Rinderknech in 4. He also won a title the weekend prior, as he won a title in Eastbourne, and he won us money because we had Fritz as the title winner for an outright price. So both guys in our good graces, as they both won an outright for us last weekend. Now they're against each other. So 2 of the, I'd say, players in the best grass form are facing off against each other. Fritz, I think, should win, but I think 455 is a bit high. I think Tabilo can win a set here. I have to wonder about stamina because he did go 5 sets against Caboli, but unlike Dimitrov, he does have an extra day off because his match is scheduled for Saturday. So that is definitely not as big of a deal as it is for Dimitrov, not to mention the age difference with Dimitrov being older and having to recover more quickly with less time to prepare. Point is, though, I think Tabilo can win a set here. I think Fritz probably wins in 4. I think Tabilo at the end of the day is not as good of a server as Fritz is, which gives Fritz the edge, as well as the experience of making a deep Wimbledon run before to the quarters. But I think Fritz wins, maybe in 4. So if you want to go for Tabilo to win a set, maybe Fritz minus 1.5 sets, maybe the over if it's going to be a low total. Don't have lines on any of those things, but I do think Tabilo can win a set. I think Fritz wins, though, in probably 4 sets. Moving on to the next matchup. Going to look at a matchup between, let me think of what matchup we're going to do next. For this one, we'll do Norrie and Zverev, which should be a fun one. Zverev's a decent favorite, as he's around minus 600. You have Norrie at around plus 400. For the head-to-head, it is 5-1 in favor of Zverev. Faced off, though, in the Australian Open this year, and that one did go to 5 sets. Now, Zverev has actually won each of the last 5 head-to-head meetings, so he has done quite well. He had one meeting this year on the Australian Open, went 5. That was actually the only matchup where Zverev lost a set in his 5-match winning streak in the head-to-head. Norrie, though, has been very good. Won in straight sets against Diaz Acosta, and then ended up winning in straight sets against Draper. As for Zverev, he's been good too. Beat Giron in straight sets and beat Baena in straight sets. So the question is, do I think the Australian Open match was a fluke? And do I think that Zverev can actually be on the ropes in this one? Or do I think it goes back to normal, where Zverev destroys him in probably straight sets? I'm going to lean more towards I think I'm going to lean more towards A, but I think Zverev's going to win. I'm not picking Norrie to pull off the upset. I gave him out on VSiN against Draper because I just thought the odds were insane. I understand why Zverev's a big favorite here. The issue is Zverev has never had a big run in Wimbledon before. So I have to question if he is going to change that narrative over the next couple days. And Norrie, of course, has the home country fans in his side, but he's been very good. Now, Zverev's serve is a lot better than Norrie's, and I think they're going to end up seeing a lot of very long rallies. But I do think that at the end that you are looking at a spot where I just think Zverev is the better player, just simply put. He's had a good year so far, made a deep run in the Australian Open, made a deep run to the final in the French Open, and you ended up seeing him fall short in those situations, but he has been good in the early rounds of Grand Slams, so I am going to go with the favorite here, but once again, the line's going to be massive. I don't have lines, so I can't use that, unfortunately. All I have is the money line. So I'm going to go with Zverev to win, but I think it's going to be competitive. Maybe Norrie wins a set. Probably not. I think you might get a breaker in there, maybe a couple of 6-4s, but I think Zverev wins. I just think he's more comfortable. And I see a message from Cayetano saying I'm being a bit harsh on Hurkacz, which, fair. I mean, he was injured at the end. I'm not going to disagree with that. I guess the other point you could make is that he was 1 point away from just ending the match, so he could have just taken the loss and I don't want to say conceded the point, but he was 1 point away from losing officially. It wasn't really a diss. It was mostly just thinking he could have gotten through one more point, but he was injured. Maybe I was a bit harsh. Apologies there. It's a fair point. So apologies if I might have been a bit too harsh there, but fair. Point is he got injured and you ended up seeing fees advance. So fair enough. I see a point from JC who says that Sinner should be able to destroy Kekmanovic, and I think I agree. The issue is Sinner has been dropping a bunch of sets lately, and that's not just going back to Friday, by the way. Sinner has dropped a set in actually a couple of matches in this event, and if you want to go back to Hala, he did end up beating Hurkacz in the final. Coincidentally, Hurkacz as well in that one in straight sets, but he has been dropping sets. So to go through his actual matches, I'll mention it for Sinner. I did drop a set against Berrettini, dropped a set against Hanfmann, then won in straight sets against Hurkacz, both in tie breaks. He probably should have lost the first set there to Hurkacz, who had a couple of set points. Zhang he beat in straight sets, was competitive though. Dropped a set to Struff, dropped a set to Morozin, dropped a set to Griekspoor. So if you want to go through his grass season so far, Sinner's actually dropped a set in, what was that, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 7 grass matches so far this year. So Sinner has been good, but he has been vulnerable, especially in the third set of matches. So JC, I agree with you on principle that Sinner should dominate against Kekmanovic. The issue is, for whatever reason, Sinner has an issue in third sets. I don't know what it is, but point is, we saw it in the first 2 matches here. Dropped the third set to Berrettini, dropped the third set to Hanfmann. I don't know what it is, so maybe if you want to go for Sinner to win the first 2 sets, and if you want to go for Kekmanovic maybe to keep the trend rolling and winning the third set, you can. Sinner should win in straight sets. You're not wrong. The issue is trying to find value, and I think his straight set win is around minus 170, give or take. So I understand it, but I really don't want to take it, especially with how often Sinner's dropped sets on grass so far in 2024. So I think Cayetano makes a point here. You can take the breaks. I don't hate that either. If Sinner's going to win, you're probably not going to get many breakers, in my opinion. Kekmanovic is a fine server, but he's also a head case who can self-destruct when things get, I'd say, when things go against him pretty quickly, and that has been what his reputation's been for being an underachiever so far on tour. He's been threatening to make a certain leap does, and it seems like mentally he checks out of matches. So I think Cayetano makes a good point here. I think Sinner can break him repeatedly. I'm not going to blame him for struggling to break against Berrettini. And even with that being the case, he did break Berrettini a couple of times in that match. Pulling up his actual return games stats against Berrettini out of curiosity. I know he broke Berrettini multiple times. I just want to quickly see how many to be exact. So Sinner ended up breaking Berrettini a grand total of 2 times, but he had 10 break points. So he had chances against a very good serve, and Berrettini did serve very well. He did have 28 aces. He did land 72% of the first serves, and he did win 69% of the first serve points. Did win 46% of the second serve points. So Sinner ran into basically serve bot Berrettini, and he still 1-4. So if Kekmanovic is going to struggle landing the first serve. Sinner should break him at least one time per set. I agree with that. So I think Sinner wins, probably in straight sets, but maybe in 4. But I'm not going to give Kecmanovic much of a chance to make the match interesting. I think Sinner will, for the most part, coast with maybe a hiccup in there, kind of like the Hanfman match, where he looks comfortable, maybe stumbles for 5-10 minutes, and then wakes up again. But I am going to go with Sinner to win comfortably. I don't mind that breaks play, though. Kecmanovic is a pretty good server, but he gets in his own head, and if the first serve percentage is not there, Sinner should apply constant pressure, which should be enough to break multiple times. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual third round. A reminder, we have a couple matches that we did not talk about that we are going to save for the lock and dog segment. But I want to actually mention one match first that I forgot about. I want to mention the matchup between Ruusuvuori and Perricard, which I want to talk about because that matchup should be fun. Perricard, despite being a lucky loser, is favored in the matchup, even though we saw Ruusuvuori just beat Tsitsipas in 4 sets. So going through the actual matchup here, I only have moneyline odds. Perricard's minus 175. You see Ruusuvuori at around plus 138. No head-to-head meetings. Ruusuvuori did win against Tsitsipas in 4 and 1 against McDonald in 5. Perricard did win in 5 against Korda and then ended up winning in straight sets against Nishioka very comfortably, only dropping 7 games in the process. For this one, simply put, I do not know what the total is going to be. Give me the over. I think these guys are going to kill each other. I think that Ruusuvuori is a good enough server to at least match Perricard, to hold a lot, kind of like the Korda match, where you're into the maybe not the 5th set with no breaks, but into the 3rd set with no breaks. But I think that you're going to see a marathon here, at least a breaker, maybe 2. And I do think if the total is going to be somewhere in the low 40s, I got to like the over here. I think it's going to be a competitive matchup. I think Perricard being a minus 175 favorite might be a bit steep, but I do think you're going to see breakers, and I think that the over is the main play. To be honest, I was considering the over for my lock on the show, but I had no lines. I did not see any game lines for this matchup, so I can't exactly give that out. Instead, I'm going to pivot, but I did see, once again, the money line market, did not see the total games market. I like the over. I see at least 1 breaker, maybe 2, and probably 4 sets minimum. So with that being the case, give me the over. I think these guys are going to kill each other, and I think that the over is a pretty good option for this matchup. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual third round preview. Now it's time for the official lock and dog picks. Before we get into that, don't remind me once again, though, you're brought to you by Rhythm. Because if you're looking to bet player props, then you need to get Rhythm, because Rhythm's the go-to sports betting tool that transforms complex data into actual insights, empowering bettors with smarter, data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm combines advanced predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easier and more enjoyable. Rhythm's predictive models were born from the brains of MIT data scientists and quants with over 3 years of data to help drive you to making better AI-backed decisions. Rhythm projections have also been red hot for WNBA and golf recently, so check that out as well. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportscamppockets.com. Rhythm, sportscamppockets.com/RATHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. See a quick comment by Joe Flo. Tell me Perricard is minus 125. Trying to remember what book I saw 175 on. I think it was Bet365. I think 365 had minus 175, which I thought was massive. But I think you're looking at, once again, 125 being a more accurate number, in my opinion, Joe. So if it's 125 on one book, that wouldn't shock me. Once again, that is a good reminder, though. Shop your lines. We're not sponsored by any sportsbook here, so I can tell you right now, go to any one or all of them and find the best line. It might take some time, maybe an extra 2-3 minutes, but it's worth it in the grand scheme of things, especially if you are betting around the clock. You want to make sure that you get the best number possible. For example, take this one, minus 125 with Perricard on one book, 175 on the other book. That means if you're betting to win $100, you're risking an extra $50 on 175. Shop your lines. It's very, very important. But Bet365, I saw, had 175. Point is, though, I do think if you can find a better line, that could be worth considering. But once again, shop your lines. Anyway, time for the lock and dog picks for the show. For the lock, I am going to go to a matchup that I did not talk about. I purposefully skipped these 2 matches to save them for the end. I'm going to go to the Musetti match. I see Comensagna taking on Musetti. I'm going to go with the over 3.5 sets at, for some reason, minus 142. I have no idea why Musetti is this big of a favorite. He is an insanely priced favorite, and he's vulnerable. Musetti, I understand, made the final in Eastbourne. Not Eastbourne, sorry. Made the final and lost to Paul in London, I think. Point is, though, he made a deep run, lost in the final. And now people think he's amazing on grass, and he's not been very comfortable so far in the event. He's gone by. Has he looked dominant? No. This match is on a Saturday, by the way, so you have time to get into it. But Musetti made the final in, trying to quickly pull up which tournament that was. That was in London. A loss to Paul in the final. Then faced off against Lestien, who's nothing special, 1-4. Then he faced off against Darderi, 1-5. So he's dropped a set in both matches here. And you're looking at Kamentsanya, who went to 5 against Walton, but he beat Rublev. And I know Rublev's not in great form, but that's still a top 10 guy in the world, and he won 4 sets. So I find it weird that Musetti is a massive favorite. Musetti on the money line here is like minus 500, which is nuts to me, especially when Musetti is not a great server. I find the line insane to me. So give me the value at the over 3.5. Musetti, to go through the actual numbers, including her final run in London, has dropped a bunch of sets. He's dropped at least 1 set in 9 of his last 10 matches. And you're looking at Kamentsanya, he's dropped at least 1 set in 6 straight matches. So both guys have been prone to dropping sets. But it's mostly Musetti being, in my opinion, an insanely priced favorite. Is he going to win? Probably. 500? What are you out of your mind? That price is insane to me. I think Musetti is not a good enough server to be laying that number. I see Helms telling me that the actual better price is minus 125 on Bovada. So I'm actually going to adjust that on the fly. Give me the over 3.5 sets at minus 125. Thanks, Helms, for telling me that. So if you are on offshore, you can get Bovada. That is at minus 125. But I think that line's too big. Musetti is, at the end of the day, not a phenomenal grass player. He's fine. But we know that mentally, he has an off switch that he kind of flips every set or so in matches. But when you drop at least 1 set to the likes of Lestien and you drop 2 sets of Darderi, I'm not going to pick you to win in straight sets. I think being minus 500 is an insane price. So once again, give me the over 3.5 sets in the Kamentsanya and Musetti match as my lock at minus 125. For the dog, I am going to go to a matchup between Nakashima and Humbert. Nakashima screwed us over with the dog last episode because we ended up having the over 3.5 sets in a parlay, and he dominated against Thompson. I'm going to back him outright. Give me Nakashima money line at plus 105 against Humbert. Nagashima's been great. He's not dropped a set yet. Ended up beating Baez and beat Thompson in straight sets. I know Baez not great on grass. Thompson, though, is pretty good on grass, and he was able to win comfortably in both matches. We know Nakashima made a deep run in Wimbledon a couple years ago. I think he lost to, who is it, Kyrgios, I think, in 5 sets. I think he lost to Kyrgios in 5 sets a couple years ago. But the point is he's a pretty good grass player who had a lot of upside about a year or two ago. Then he kind of fell off a cliff, and he was busy with challengers. But Nagashima, based on the first couple rounds, has regained his form. And I think he's a solid grass player. Now, Humbert, we know, does have a grass title. This year, though, not the greatest on grass. He's been better in years past. But he also had a marathon in the first round, which gives me some doubt about his current form. Now, Humbert, to go in order, did win in straight sets in his second round matchup. But I do think that de Zandschulp, we know, is an absolute head case. So I'm not going to overreact to him beating Van de Zandschulp in straight sets. I think we all know my thoughts on his opponent for that one. De Zandschulp's one of the biggest head cases on tour. Shevchenko, though, is not known for being a good grass player, and he won 5 sets in the first round. So I think Humbert is vulnerable, and I do think that Nakashima has the firepower to give Humbert problems. Now, Humbert is very skilled. He has a very unique, I'd say, lefty style, but I do think that the firepower advantage goes in favor of Nakashima. And I do think it's worth mentioning, even though it was on clay, and even though it was a couple years ago, Nakashima did win the last meeting in straight sets. So Nakashima is tied 1-1 in the head-to-head. The first matchup was a long time ago. Second one was 2 years ago. So the most recent meeting, Nakashima did win comfortably. But I think that if you looked at how both guys have played so far in this event, Nakashima has been the more solid player. And I think the odds are off because of it. Give me Nakashima on the money line as my dog. So once again, my picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Musetti, over 3.5 sets at minus 125. And my dog's going to be on Nakashima money line at plus 105. A reminder, we're back once again for the 4th round of Wimbledon in a couple days. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the WNBA show. Episode's coming up actually in about 10 minutes. So flip over to the NBA Gambling Podcast for that live stream. And find me on the MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.